The stars had become familiar companions. Weeks had passed since the Serenity returned to Earth, yet the memory of the blue world still lingered in quiet moments. Sometimes, as evening settled over the observatory, you found yourself gazing toward Orion, wondering whether the endless ocean still shimmered beneath its distant sun. Perhaps the gentle giants were still drifting beneath living constellations. Perhaps the floating forests still swayed with invisible currents. The universe, you had learned, never stopped becoming beautiful simply because no one was watching. Life on Earth slowly returned to its ordinary rhythm. Morning coffee. The rustling of leaves outside your window. Rain tapping softly against the glass. Things that once felt ordinary now carried a quiet sense of wonder. Every drop of rain reminded you of the sky tide. Every sunrise echoed the wellspring. Every calm evening seemed connected to some distant corner of the galaxy. The journey had changed nothing. The journey had changed everything. One peaceful evening, your communicator chimed. Not loudly. Just one soft tone. A message from the Serenity. The navigator had written only a single sentence. There is a light older than memory. Nothing more. No coordinates. No explanation. Only those 7 words. You smiled. That was invitation enough. Several days later, the Serenity slipped silently away from Earth once more. The blue planet slowly receded beneath the ship. Clouds drifted across its surface exactly as they always had. The moon watched quietly from its familiar orbit. No grand farewell. No dramatic launch. Only another gentle departure. The navigator welcomed you with the same warm smile. It is good to travel together again. So where are we going? The navigator looked through the forward window. To a place that very few civilizations have ever found. You waited. It cannot be discovered by searching. Another pause. It only appears to those who have learned to travel slowly. The ion engines awakened with their familiar whisper. Stars stretched gently as the Serenity entered faster than light drift. Not violently. Not suddenly. Space simply unfolded. As though the universe had opened another page. Days passed without hurry. Outside, constellations slowly rearranged themselves. Nebulae drifted silently beyond the windows. Ancient star clusters glowed like forgotten lanterns. The journey itself felt like meditation. Each morning began with warm tea. Each evening ended beneath impossible skies. Sometimes neither of you spoke for hours. Silence had become another language aboard the Serenity. On the 7th day, something changed. Not in the ship. In the stars. One by one, the brightest stars ahead began disappearing. Not because they were moving. Something was standing between them. A shape. Too enormous to understand. At first, it resembled a dark cloud. Then, a faint silver outline appeared. Perfectly vertical. Perfectly still. Stretching far beyond the limits of sight. The navigator stood quietly. We've arrived. You looked again. The object reflected almost no light. It blended into the darkness so completely that only the missing stars revealed its existence. As the Serenity approached, its scale slowly became unimaginable. The structure was thousands of kilometers tall, perhaps larger. Its surface appeared carved from smooth black stone unlike any material known on Earth. No seams, no windows, no engines, only timeless stillness. Then, far above, a single light awakened. Soft, golden, steady. It did not flash. It did not sweep across space. It simply glowed, like a candle placed in the window of an ancient home. The navigator lowered their voice. "The lighthouse beyond time." You frowned gently. "A lighthouse?" The navigator nodded. "It has guided travelers for longer than most stars have existed." You stared at the impossible beacon. No ship surrounded it. No station orbited nearby. No civilization appeared to maintain it. Yet the light never faded, never flickered, never rested. The Serenity slowed until it was almost motionless. The golden light reflected across the hull. For a brief moment, every polished surface shimmered with warm amber tones. The silence became deeper than space itself. Then, something extraordinary happened. The light pulsed. Only once. A gentle wave of gold expanded outward through the darkness. It passed through the ship without resistance. Every instrument remained calm. No alarms. No warnings. Only one quiet message appeared upon the central display. "Welcome, travelers." No language had been selected. Yet somehow, you understood every word. The navigator smiled. "It always knows." Knows what? When someone arrives with curiosity instead of conquest. The lighthouse remained silent once more. Its single golden flame continued burning against the endless night. Then, beneath the beacon, darkness itself began to move. A narrow bridge of pale white light slowly unfolded from the tower. It stretched across the emptiness of space. Longer. Farther. Until it reached directly toward the Serenity. It was not made of metal, nor crystal, nor energy as human science understood it. It resembled solid moonlight, patiently waiting. The navigator rested one hand upon the navigation controls. "The library is ready." You looked beyond the glowing bridge. At first, there seemed to be nothing beyond it. Then, far in the darkness, countless tiny lights slowly awakened. Millions of them, arranged in impossible geometric patterns. Like windows, like stars, like shelves stretching beyond the end of time itself. The navigator smiled gently. "Tomorrow," they whispered, "we climb the endless staircase. Behind you, the familiar galaxy continued its eternal dance. Ahead, a single lighthouse quietly guarded the greatest collection of memories the universe had ever known. And somewhere beyond its golden light, An infinite library waited patiently for someone willing to turn the first page. The golden light of the lighthouse continued shining through the endless darkness. Behind the serenity, the familiar stars of the Milky Way stretched across space like a quiet river. Ahead, the bridge of pale white light remained perfectly still. It connected the ship to something far older than imagination. Neither metal, nor stone, nor energy. It looked as though moonlight itself had decided to become solid. The navigator waited. "We should continue on foot." You looked through the observation window. "In space?" The navigator smiled. "Some places change the rules." The Serenity gently settled beside the glowing bridge. No docking clamps appeared. No airlock extended. Only silence. The cabin door opened. Warm air remained inside. Beyond it, there should have been the freezing vacuum of space. Instead, a gentle breeze drifted inward. Cool, fresh, carrying the faint scent of rain after a long summer evening. You stepped forward. The moment your foot touched the white bridge, you felt no weight. Yet you were not floating. It was as though gravity had become softer, kinder. Each step required almost no effort. The navigator walked beside you. Their footsteps made no sound. Neither did yours. The bridge seemed unwilling to disturb the silence. Far ahead, the black silhouette of the lighthouse towered beyond sight. Its single golden beacon glowed steadily above. Every few moments, small particles of silver light drifted upward from the bridge. Not dust, not snow. Tiny fragments of ancient starlight. They rose lazily before dissolving into the darkness. You reached toward one. It rested briefly upon your hand. Warm, like sunlight remembered. Then it quietly disappeared. The navigator noticed. The bridge remembers every traveler. You looked at the empty space where the tiny light had vanished. That was someone's memory? A small one. They smiled gently. Perhaps the feeling of watching rain, or hearing a favorite song. The universe rarely forgets beautiful moments. You continued walking. The bridge stretched endlessly ahead. Yet strangely, it never felt tiring. Time itself seemed different here. Minutes became impossible to count. Eventually, the bridge widened. Its smooth surface slowly transformed into broad white steps, one after another, each nearly 20 meters wide. They climbed gently toward the distant beacon. You looked upward. The staircase vanished into the darkness. Its highest point could not be seen. The endless staircase. The navigator's voice was almost a whisper. It has no measured length. You frowned slightly. How can a staircase have no length? It becomes exactly as long as each traveler needs. The answer somehow felt complete. No further explanation seemed necessary. Together, you began climbing. Each step glowed faintly beneath your feet. Not brightly. Only enough to suggest that the staircase was quietly awake. The surrounding darkness remained peaceful. Occasionally, small islands of light floated nearby. At first, they appeared to be stars. Then you realized they were lanterns. Thousands of delicate lanterns drifted through space. Each carried a tiny golden flame. None were connected by wires. None moved with any obvious current. They simply floated. Patiently, you watched one drift close. Inside its glass, images slowly appeared. A child laughing beside a river. Two old friends sharing tea beneath autumn leaves. A mother reading a bedtime story. A musician playing alone beneath the night sky. The images faded. The lantern continued drifting into the darkness. The navigator spoke softly. Happy memories become lanterns, so travelers never feel alone. You looked around. There were countless lanterns. Millions perhaps. Each one preserving a quiet joy from somewhere in the universe. No sadness. No regret. Only moments worth remembering. The staircase climbed higher. The lighthouse slowly grew larger. Its surface remained impossibly smooth. No doors. No windows. Only black stone reflecting faint traces of starlight. After what felt like hours, the navigator stopped. There, far below, the serenity appeared no larger than a silver leaf floating upon a dark lake. Beyond it, the Milky Way stretched across eternity. You had never seen the galaxy from such a perspective. It looked peaceful, like a river flowing through infinite night. You realized something. The higher you climbed, the quieter your thoughts became. Worries that had followed you from Earth seemed strangely distant. Not forgotten. Simply lighter. Perhaps every step removed a little unnecessary weight. The navigator smiled. The staircase asks only one thing. What is that? Leave behind what you no longer need. You stood quietly. Then, without speaking, you imagined placing your hurried thoughts upon one of the glowing steps. They did not disappear. They simply remained behind, waiting for someone else who might transform them into wisdom. The climb became easier. Much easier. Ahead, the darkness slowly changed. A faint golden doorway appeared within the black wall of the lighthouse. The first opening you had seen. It stood hundreds of meters tall. Yet it felt welcoming rather than overwhelming. Above it, symbols of light slowly shifted across the stone. You could not read them. Yet somehow, they felt familiar. The navigator looked upward. The library writes its own welcome. As you approached, the symbols gradually transformed. Their shapes softened, until they became words. Not in English. Not in any language. Yet your mind understood them instantly. Every life is worth remembering. You stopped. The sentence settled quietly within you. Perhaps that was why this place existed. Not to preserve history. Not to collect knowledge. But to ensure that no beautiful life was ever truly forgotten. The enormous doorway opened without a sound. Warm golden light spilled gently across the final steps. Beyond it, you caught only the smallest glimpse. Towering shelves disappearing into infinity. Floating stairways woven from light. Millions upon millions of glowing books. The air shimmered with tiny particles of gold, like sunlight passing through an ancient cathedral. The navigator smiled. "We have arrived." You stood at the threshold. Not eager. Not afraid. Simply grateful. Behind you, the endless staircase continued descending into the stars. Ahead, the greatest library ever created quietly waited. Tomorrow, you would meet the keeper, the one who had watched over every story, since before history itself had learned how to write. The morning inside the library arrived without sunrise. There were no windows, no horizon, no passing clouds. Yet somehow, the light became softer, warmer, as though the library itself understood the quiet rhythm of a new day. The keeper was already waiting beneath the tree of beginnings. A small cup of steaming tea rested beside him. Another waited for you. The navigator smiled. He always knows when someone is ready to learn. The keeper nodded gently. The library teaches only one lesson each day. Why only one? He lifted his cup. Because wisdom grows slowly. You accepted the warm tea. Its fragrance was unlike anything you had tasted before. A hint of cedar, fresh rain, wildflowers, and something impossible to describe. It reminded you of childhood, without belonging to any single memory. The keeper stood. Come. Together. The three of you descended the spiral staircase beneath the great silver tree. Each step glowed softly beneath your feet. The deeper you walked, the quieter everything became. Soon, even your own footsteps faded away. At the bottom, a magnificent chamber unfolded before you. It was circular, so vast that its far walls disappeared into golden mist. Thousands of floating books drifted peacefully through the air. Some slowly opened by themselves. Others gently closed. None ever collided. Each moved with graceful certainty. The keeper spread his hands. The hall of living books. You watched one drift close. Its cover shimmered like polished glass. There were no words upon it. Only flowing light. It has no title? The keeper smiled. Titles come later. He carefully lifted the book into his hands. The cover slowly unfolded without making a sound. There were no paper pages. No ink. Only thin sheets of glowing light. Each page appeared almost transparent. Tiny stars drifted beneath its surface. The light changed constantly, never repeating the same pattern twice. You leaned closer. The page suddenly became a sunrise. Then, an ocean. Then, a mountain covered in snow. Then, a child laughing beneath purple trees. The images flowed smoothly into one another. Not like a film. more like memory itself. You whispered, "It isn't reading." The keeper nodded. "No. It is remembering." He turned another page. The chamber around you disappeared. For a brief moment, you stood beside a quiet lake beneath 3 golden moons. The air smelled of flowers. Gentle birds sang somewhere beyond the trees. A cool breeze touched your face. Then, you were back inside the library. You blinked in amazement. What happened? The keeper closed the book. You experienced a memory. The navigator smiled. Books here are not read. They are visited. The sentence lingered. Visited. Not read. Every story remained alive. The keeper carefully returned the glowing volume. The moment it left his hands, the cover changed color once again, as though grateful. Nearby, another floating book slowly approached. This one glowed deep blue. Its pages shimmered like flowing water. Without touching it, you heard distant whale songs, gentle waves, the quiet rhythm of tides. The keeper looked toward you. Some books invite. Others wait. This one has chosen you. You hesitated. May I? He smiled warmly. Of course. Your fingertips barely touched the cover. Immediately, the book opened. The chamber dissolved into light. You found yourself standing upon an endless ocean beneath unfamiliar stars. The sea stretched forever. No ships. No islands. Only peaceful water reflecting countless constellations. A gentle breeze carried the scent of salt. Far away, something enormous surfaced. Not frightening. Majestic. A creature larger than mountains slowly exhaled silver mist into the night sky. You watched in complete silence. The creature noticed you. It lowered its immense head. Not to inspect. To greet. Moments later, the vision slowly faded. The library returned. Your hand still rested upon the glowing cover. The keeper observed quietly. You have just visited a memory nearly 9 billion years old. You looked down at the book. It still exists? The memory does. The world no longer does. His answer carried no sadness. Only peace. You suddenly understood. The library was not preserving the past. It was allowing beautiful moments to continue existing. Forever. The keeper began walking deeper into the chamber. Along the walls, millions of books floated within slow circles of golden light. Some glowed brightly. Others only faintly. One shelf remained empty. Completely empty. You pointed toward it. There are no books there. The keeper smiled. There are. You looked again. Still nothing. They simply haven't happened yet. The words settled gently into your thoughts. Future stories. Waiting patiently for lives not yet lived. Dreams not yet dreamed. Children not yet born. Every possibility already had a place prepared. The keeper stopped before a single floating page. Not a book. Only one page. It shimmered softly in the air. What is this? A beginning. The page remained blank. Then, very slowly, a single golden line appeared. Another followed. Then another. The light arranged itself into delicate symbols. Not written by any hand. The page was writing itself. You watched in quiet wonder. It has started. The keeper's voice was almost a whisper. Somewhere in the universe, a new story has just begun. The blank page slowly folded itself. A cover formed around it. One page became two. Two became three. The tiny book gently floated upward. Its place among the countless shelves had already been waiting. The navigator smiled. Every second, new books are born. You remain silent, watching the little volume disappear into the endless library. For the first time, you realized this place was not a museum. It was alive, growing, breathing, expanding with every heartbeat in the universe. The keeper looked toward a distant archway glowing with pale silver light. Beyond it, countless shelves stretched farther than the eye could follow. There is another hall. He smiled gently. It is unlike any place you have ever imagined. You followed his gaze. The silver light shimmered quietly, almost inviting. The keeper turned toward the archway. Tomorrow, he whispered, I will show you the Hall of Forgotten Worlds. Behind you, the Hall of Living Books continued creating new stories. One gentle page at a time. One quiet life at a time. Never rushing. Never stopping. Just as the universe itself had always done. The silver archway stood quietly at the far end of the Hall of Living Books. Unlike every doorway you had seen before, it emitted no golden light. Instead, it shimmered with a soft silver glow. Gentle. Almost like moonlight reflected upon a still lake. The keeper paused before entering. For several moments, he simply rested one hand upon the smooth stone. This hall, he said softly, asks visitors to walk slowly. The navigator smiled. We always do. The keeper returned the smile. Today, even more slowly. Together, you crossed the threshold. The air immediately felt cooler. Not cold. Peacefully cool. Like entering an ancient forest at dawn. The room beyond stretched farther than imagination. Endless circular shelves spiraled upward into silver mist. Unlike the warm golden books of the previous hall, these volumes glowed in gentle shades of blue, white, and pale silver. Each shelf was separated by wide open spaces. Nothing felt crowded. Every story had room to breathe. Soft lights floated between the shelves. Not lanterns. Tiny glowing seeds. They drifted lazily through the air before settling briefly upon different books. Whenever one touched a cover, the book shimmered gently, almost as though someone had whispered, I remember you. You watched one glowing seed land upon a small blue volume. Its cover brightened for only a heartbeat. Then the seed floated away. "What are they?" you asked. The keeper answered quietly. "Remembrances. They visit stories that have not been opened for a long time." The idea filled the hall with unexpected warmth. Even forgotten books were never truly alone. You continued deeper inside. The shelves became older. Some books appeared almost transparent. Others shimmered so faintly that they seemed ready to dissolve into light. Yet every single one remained perfectly preserved. The keeper stopped beside an enormous shelf carved from crystal-like stone. He gently removed a book no larger than your hand. Its cover was plain. No decoration. Only a tiny silver star resting at its center. He held it with extraordinary care. This world no longer exists. You looked at the small book. What happened to it? The keeper smiled gently. It finished. Not destroyed. Not lost. Simply finished. He opened the first page. The library disappeared. You found yourself standing beneath a lavender sky. Gentle hills rolled endlessly toward the horizon. Crystal rivers reflected 3 small suns. Delicate trees with translucent leaves swayed in a peaceful breeze. Tiny winged creatures drifted among blowing flowers. Everything radiated quiet harmony. A family sat beneath one of the trees. They shared fruit. They laughed softly. A child reached toward the sky, trying to catch drifting petals carried by the wind. The moment felt so ordinary, so beautiful. Then, the vision slowly faded. The library returned. The keeper carefully closed the book. That, he whispered, was their final afternoon. You frowned. The final? He nodded. Their star reached the end of its life. There was no fear. No suffering. They gathered together to watch one last sunset. Silence settled gently around you. The keeper returned the book to its shelf. It is remembered exactly as it wished to be remembered. You continued walking. Millions of worlds surrounded you. Entire civilizations. Entire histories. Entire lives. Each resting peacefully inside quiet books. The keeper stopped again. This time, he removed a much larger volume. Its cover shimmered emerald green. Unlike the previous book, this one hums softly. What makes it different? It is still being visited. The keeper opened a single page. A vast forest unfolded before you. Towering trees stretched into clouds. Creatures wandered peacefully beneath emerald canopies. Gentle rain fell through beams of golden sunlight. You noticed something unusual. The scene did not remain still. Birds continued flying. Streams continued flowing. Leaves continued dancing in the wind. It is alive? The keeper smiled. Memory continues growing whenever someone remembers with love. You stood quietly. The idea seemed impossible. Yet somehow, completely natural. Perhaps memory itself was another form of life. The keeper closed the book. It has not changed in millions of years. Yet every visitor notices something different. He looked toward you. The stories do not speak. They listen. You thought about the blue world. About the gentle giants. About the sky tide. Every memory had become softer with time. Not weaker. Richer. You understood. The stories had been listening to you as well. Far ahead. An enormous circular chamber slowly came into view. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness. At its center floated a sphere of shimmering light. Thousands of tiny threads connected the sphere to surrounding shelves. The keeper approached with quiet reverence. "This," he whispered, "is the memory atlas?" You gazed upward. Every glowing thread stretched toward a different book. Different world. Different civilization. Different life. Together, they formed a luminous map of everything the library protected. The sphere pulsed gently. One thread brightened. Then another. Then hundreds. What does it mean? The keeper smiled. Someone, somewhere in the universe, has just remembered them. The glowing thread slowly faded again. The library never demanded remembrance. It simply welcomed it. You noticed something curious. Near the very center of the sphere, one thread shone brighter than all the others. It glowed deep blue, almost the color of Earth's oceans. You pointed toward it. The keeper followed your gaze. His smile grew warmer. "That one," he said softly, "belongs to Earth." You looked more closely. Among billions of stories, your home still shone brightly. Not because it was the greatest. Not because it was the oldest. Because every day, billions of people continued creating new memories. Children learning to walk. Families sharing meals. Artists painting. Scientists discovering. Friends laughing beneath evening skies. The thread never stopped glowing. The keeper rested a gentle hand upon the sphere. The library treasures every world equally. He paused. But living worlds always shine the brightest. The chamber became wonderfully quiet once again. Only the soft pulse of the memory atlas echoed through the endless hall. You realized something. Nothing beautiful was ever measured by size. A single smile. A quiet conversation. A peaceful afternoon. They belonged beside stars and galaxies. The keeper slowly turned toward another passage. Unlike the silver halls behind you, this corridor shimmered with deep sapphire light. Gentle patterns drifted across its walls like moving constellations. He looked back and smiled. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "you will learn the language of stars." Beyond the sapphire passage, faint symbols of living light slowly awakened. Not words. Not music. Something older than both. Patiently waiting. For someone ready to understand. The sapphire corridor glowed quietly before you. Its walls were unlike anything else within the library. They were not built from stone, nor crystal, nor metal. Instead, they seemed woven from countless strands of light. Each strand drifted gently through the wall like a slow-moving constellation. The keeper walked ahead without hurry. The navigator followed a respectful distance behind. You stepped into the corridor. Immediately, the silence changed. It was no longer empty. It carried something almost impossible to hear. A gentle rhythm. Soft, steady, like breathing. You stopped walking. Do you hear that? The navigator smiled. I hoped you would. The keeper nodded. Most travelers don't. The sound was incredibly faint. Not music. Not voices. Not wind. Something deeper. Almost like the universe quietly speaking to itself. The corridor curved gently. Its sapphire walls shimmered with moving patterns. Tiny points of light appeared, disappeared, then reappeared somewhere else. They reminded you of stars, except they were far too orderly. Each light seemed to answer another. Across impossible distances, the keeper finally spoke. Long before any civilization invented words, the universe already had a language. You looked around. The stars? They have always been speaking. We simply learned to notice. The corridor slowly widened into a circular chamber. Unlike the halls of books, this room contained almost nothing. No shelves, no tables, no books. Only a perfectly smooth floor beneath an enormous transparent dome. Beyond the dome, space stretched endlessly. Millions of stars surrounded the chamber in every direction. It felt as though the library had opened directly into the universe itself. At the center stood a single stone pedestal. Upon it rested no object, only a small sphere of white light. The keeper approached it carefully. This room has remained unchanged for nearly 13 billion years. You looked at the tiny sphere. It seemed so simple. The keeper smiled. The oldest truths usually are. He gently raised his hand. The white sphere floated upward. Slowly. Gracefully. It stopped between the three of you. Then, without warning, it separated into hundreds of tiny lights. Each drifted into the air. They formed familiar constellations. Orion, Cassiopeia, the Southern Cross. Then the patterns changed. Constellations unknown to humanity appeared. Ancient skies belonging to forgotten worlds. The lights continued moving. Never randomly. Always with quiet purpose. The keeper whispered. Every star has 3 stories. You waited. The story of its birth. The story of its light. And the story of those who looked up. The tiny stars slowly rearranged themselves again. This time, thin silver lines appeared between them. Some connections lasted only seconds. Others remained. A vast web emerged. far more beautiful than any constellation. The navigator watched quietly. Gravity? The keeper nodded. And friendship. You smiled. He continued. Every star influences another. No light shines completely alone. The sentence echoed gently through the chamber. Perhaps people were not so different. The keeper touched one glowing star. Immediately, its light pulsed outward. Moments later, another distant point answered. Then another. And another. The response spread across the entire celestial web. Like ripples across a still lake. You watched in amazement. They're communicating? In a way. The keeper looked toward the endless dome. Light is patient. A star may wait thousands of years for another star to answer. No hurry. No disappointment. Only trust. The keeper lowered his hand. The lights settled once more. You have spent your whole life seeing stars. He looked toward you kindly. Today, I would like you to hear one. The chamber became completely silent. Even your breathing seemed to fade. The keeper gently closed his eyes. The tiny stars above slowly brightened. One golden light drifted closer than the others. It hovered only a few meters away. Warm. Steady. Peaceful. The keeper whispered. Listen. At first, nothing happened. Then, very slowly, a sound emerged. Not through your ears. Somewhere deeper. A single gentle note. Pure. Calm. It carried no melody. Only presence. The note lingered for several moments. Then faded. You opened your eyes. I felt it. The keeper smiled. Exactly. The language of stars is not spoken. It is experienced. The golden light slowly returned to the constellation above. The room became still once more. You realized something. Every sunrise on Earth, every sunset, every warm afternoon beneath blue skies, had begun as silent conversations between distant stars billions of years ago. The universe had always been speaking. Life itself was simply one of its replies. The keeper walked toward the edge of the dome. Beyond it, a brilliant star slowly rotated in the darkness. Far away, yet astonishingly clear. That star, he said softly, has been singing since before your sun existed. You stood beside him. Its golden light shimmered gently across the transparent dome. No words. No message. Only quiet existence. Somehow, that was enough. The navigator rested a hand upon the railing. When travelers leave this library, they said, they usually remember the books. The keeper smiled. But the stars remember the travelers. The thought filled you with unexpected peace. Somewhere, perhaps countless years from now, the light reflected from your face at this very moment would continue traveling across the galaxy. a tiny part of your existence, forever joining the endless conversation. The keeper looked toward another doorway hidden within the chamber. Unlike every passage before, this one glowed with deep turquoise light. Gentle waves of illumination rolled across its surface, almost like sunlight dancing beneath clear water. The first lesson is complete. He bowed his head slightly. Tomorrow, he whispered, we will open the oldest book in the library. You looked toward the turquoise doorway. A faint scent of salt drifted through the air. Somewhere beyond, an ancient ocean was waiting. Not upon a planet, not inside a memory, but within the very first story the universe had ever chosen to preserve. The emerald doorway opened slowly. A gentle breeze carried the fragrance of moss, rain, and fresh leaves into the quiet halls of the library. For a moment, it felt less like entering another room, and more like stepping into spring itself. The keeper walked forward. The navigator followed. You took one final glance behind. The hull of the first ocean faded softly into golden mist. Its ancient waves continued resting inside their living book. Ahead, a forest was waiting. Not an ordinary forest. The oldest one the library had ever remembered. The emerald passage curved gently downward. Soft green light filtered through its walls like sunlight passing beneath leaves. Tiny particles floated lazily in the air. They resembled pollen. Yet each spark contained tiny galaxies turning slowly within. The keeper noticed you watching them. They are called seedlights. What do they grow? He smiled. Understanding. The corridor widened. The ceiling disappeared. Above you, branches stretched farther than sight itself. Massive trunks rose into the emerald glow. Each tree seemed larger than a mountain. Their bark shimmered with deep silver patterns that flowed gently across the surface like rivers. No wind stirred the forest. Yet every leaf moved. Not randomly. Slowly. Gracefully. As though responding to something invisible. The keeper whispered, gravity. You looked upward. The leaves can feel it? They always have. He rested his hand upon the nearest trunk. This forest remembers every force that has ever touched it. The words seemed impossible. Then again, so had every lesson the library had shared. You approached one enormous tree. Its trunk was wide enough to shelter an entire village. The bark felt warm beneath your fingertips. Immediately, soft ripples of light spread outward. The silver patterns began flowing faster. The tree was responding. Not with sound, with memory. The forest around you slowly faded. In its place, the stars appeared. Countless newborn suns glowed within an ancient galaxy. You watched them drift through space. Some moved closer together, others farther apart. Invisible currents guided every motion. The tree was remembering gravity itself. Not as mathematics, not as equations, as experience. The vision shifted. A comet swept silently across the darkness. A distant planet slowly formed from swirling clouds of dust. Moons settled into peaceful orbits. Every movement was gentle. Every path connected. Then, the vision dissolved. The forest returned. The silver ripples faded into the bark. You stepped back quietly. It remembers everything. The keeper nodded. Nothing touches the universe without leaving a story. The navigator smiled. Even falling leaves. The keeper looked upward. Especially falling leaves. A single emerald leaf detached from one of the towering branches. It did not fall. Instead, it drifted slowly through the air. Its path curved gracefully, almost dancing. You watched every tiny movement. The leaf avoided branches, circled a glowing flower, floated around a crystal stone. Only after several peaceful minutes did it finally touch the forest floor. The keeper bent down and picked it up. This leaf has just completed a journey. He handed it to you. It felt impossibly light. Tiny silver lines shimmered across its surface. You looked closer. The lines formed delicate spirals. Galaxies. Star systems. Planetary orbits. The entire journey of the leaf had been recorded upon itself. The keeper smiled. Gravity writes slowly. The three of you continued deeper into the forest. The silence here was different. Not empty. Alive. Somewhere far above, birds sang. Their songs echoed gently through the endless branches. Yet no birds could be seen. The music seemed woven into the forest itself. Sunlight filtered through the emerald canopy. Golden beams drifted between enormous trunks. Within each beam, millions of tiny seedlights floated peacefully. The forest glowed without needing any sun. It remembered enough light of its own. After a long walk, you reached a quiet clearing. At its center stood a single tree unlike the others. Smaller. Older. Its bark was almost white. Its branches spread outward in perfect balance. Above it, space itself appeared slightly distorted. Starlight curved gently around the tree. You frowned. The light is bending. The keeper nodded. This tree has stood here since the universe was very young. It has felt the pull of galaxies, the birth of stars, and the passing of black holes. The tree had experienced so much gravity that space itself now remembered standing beside it. You approached slowly. The white bark shimmered with delicate golden veins. Without thinking, you placed your hand against the trunk. Immediately, everything became still. No visions appeared. No voices spoke. Only a feeling. An extraordinary sense of belonging. As though every journey, every planet, every star had always been connected. You realized gravity was more than a force. It was a promise. A quiet promise that nothing in the universe truly drifted alone. Everything gently called to something else. Stars called planets. Galaxies called stars. Hearts called one another. The keeper watched peacefully. You understand. You nodded. I think so. He smiled. No. You remember. The answer filled you with quiet warmth. Perhaps understanding was not learning something new. Perhaps it was recognizing something the universe had been whispering all along. The white tree released a single glowing seed. It floated gently into the air. Not upward. Not downward. Simply where it needed to go. The seed light drifted beyond the clearing, disappearing among the endless forest. Where will it grow? You asked. The keeper looked toward the distant canopy. Wherever a new story needs roots. The forest slowly brightened. Evening, if such a thing existed here, was gently approaching. Long shadows stretched peacefully across the emerald floor. The keeper turned toward another path. Beyond the trees, a warm amber light shimmered through the leaves. You could hear distant laughter, soft voices, the quiet rhythm of many lives lived together. The keeper smiled. Tomorrow, he whispered, you will visit a civilization that never discovered war. The path ahead glowed warmly. Behind you, the oldest forest in the universe continued listening to every gentle pull, every falling leaf, and every quiet journey, written forever in the patient language of gravity. The amber path wound peacefully through the ancient forest. The white tree slowly disappeared behind emerald leaves. Its quiet lesson lingered in your thoughts. Nothing in the universe truly traveled alone. Everything belonged to something greater. The forest gradually became brighter. Warm golden light filtered gently through the branches. The scent of cedar gave way to blooming flowers. Somewhere nearby, water flowed over smooth stones. The sound was calm, steady, comforting. The keeper slowed his steps. We are approaching a very special memory. The navigator smiled. One of your favorites. The keeper nodded. I return here often. The path opened into a wide valley. For a moment, you forgot to breathe. The landscape stretched beneath a sky painted in soft shades of gold and pale blue. Rolling green meadows shimmered beneath gentle sunlight. Crystal rivers curved through fields of silver grass. Trees with wide sapphire leaves cast cool shadows across quiet pathways. In the distance, small towns rested among flowering hills. No walls surrounded them. No towers stood watch. No gates blocked the roads. The entire world seemed to trust itself. Tiny birds drifted lazily across the sky. Children laughed beside a stream. Someone played a simple wooden flute beneath an old tree. The melody floated gently through the valley. The keeper smiled. This world never invented war. You looked toward him. Never? He shook his head. They imagined many things. Art, music, astronomy, medicine, poetry, but never the idea that another person should be conquered. The sentence settled softly within you. You continued walking. The villagers noticed your arrival. Instead of surprise, they simply smiled. An elderly woman waved gently from her garden. Two children ran toward you carrying baskets of bright blue fruit. They offered one to each of you before running back toward the river. No questions. No suspicion. Only kindness. The navigator accepted the fruit with quiet gratitude. It tastes different every time. You took a small bite. Sweet. Fresh. It carried hints of honey, pear, and cool mountain air. Somehow, it tasted like a peaceful afternoon. The keeper laughed softly. The fruit changes slightly to welcome each visitor. Nearby, a group of artists sat beside the river. None painted the same landscape. One painted the reflections upon the water. Another painted only the clouds. A third painted the silence between the trees. You watched for several moments. No one compared their work. No one judged another. Each simply created. The keeper noticed your expression. They never asked who was the best. They only wondered what beauty another person had discovered. The village square came into view. It contained no marketplace, no government building. At its center stood a great circular table beneath an enormous flowering tree. People gathered there throughout the day, talking quietly, sharing meals, listening. The keeper led you closer. What happens if they disagree? You asked. He smiled. They become curious. The answer surprised you. Curious? They believe every disagreement hides a piece of understanding they have not yet found. Around the table, people spoke gently. Sometimes someone laughed. Sometimes everyone became wonderfully silent. No voice rose above another. No one hurried. The conversation flowed like a peaceful river. A young child approached the keeper. She carried a tiny clay bowl filled with glowing flowers. Without saying a word, she handed him one blossom. The keeper accepted it with a grateful bow. What does it mean? The child smiled. It means, I'm happy you're here. She skipped away before another question could be asked. The keeper looked at the flower in his hand. On this world, gratitude is spoken more often than greeting. The blossom slowly unfolded. Its petals shimmered with soft golden light before drifting gently into the breeze. Nothing here seemed eager to last forever. Beauty arrived, shared itself, then quietly moved on. The three of you continued through the village. You noticed there were no locks upon the doors, no fences around gardens. Musical instruments rested unattended beside pathways. Books lay open beneath trees. Everything remained exactly where it belonged. Not because someone protected it, because everyone did. The keeper paused beside a quiet pond. Its surface reflected the entire sky perfectly. When archaeologists from another civilization first discovered this world, They searched for ancient battlefields. He smiled. They never found one. No ruins? No weapons? The keeper gently shook his head. They found gardens, libraries, observatories, and schools. The pond rippled softly. A family of graceful silver birds landed upon the water. Their reflections became tiny stars before fading once more. The navigator sat upon a smooth stone. I used to think peace was fragile. They watched the birds. Now I believe. Peace is something we practice. The keeper nodded quietly. Every single day. The afternoon drifted by like a slow dream. Musicians gathered beneath the flowering tree. Their melodies blended with birdsong and flowing water. Children planted young trees beside their grandparents. Artists exchanged paintings simply because they admired them. Nobody hurried home. Nobody watched the clock. Time seemed content to wander. As evening approached, the entire valley glowed beneath warm amber light. The sky slowly deepened into violet. Tiny stars appeared above. One by one, the villagers carried small lanterns to the great table. Not because darkness had arrived, but because light is more beautiful when shared. The keeper stood quietly. This civilization ended long ago. You looked around in surprise. Everything felt so alive. What happened? He smiled peacefully. They chose to leave. Leave? They built ships. Not for conquest, but for curiosity. They traveled among the stars, carrying only music, stories, and seeds. You watched the lanterns reflecting in the river. Somewhere, perhaps on distant worlds, their descendants still planted gardens beneath unfamiliar skies. The civilization had not vanished. It had simply continued. The keeper looked toward the heavens. A brilliant constellation slowly rose above the valley. They taught the galaxy something very simple. He turned toward you. Civilizations become truly advanced. Not when they build greater weapons, but when they no longer imagine needing them. The stars brightened overhead. Soft laughter echoed across the fields. Warm lanterns drifted gently into the night sky. The village slowly became a sea of quiet lights. The keeper began walking toward another pathway. This one shimmered with deep sapphire patterns that pulsed gently like flowing numbers. Strange symbols floated above the stones. Elegant. Perfectly balanced. He smiled. Tomorrow, he whispered, we will visit a planet where mathematics became music. Behind you, the peaceful valley remained exactly as the library had preserved it. A world where kindness had never been interrupted, and where every sunset ended, not with victory, but with gratitude. The sapphire pathway shimmered beneath your feet. Each step awakened delicate patterns of light. Circles, spirals, perfect geometric forms that appeared for only a moment before fading peacefully away. The valley behind you slowly disappeared into golden mist. Its laughter lingered softly in your memory. Ahead, The air itself seemed different. Calmer. More precise. Almost as though every breath followed an invisible rhythm. The keeper walked beside you. There are many languages in the universe. He smiled gently. Some are spoken. Some are written. And some can only be understood by listening. The corridor gradually opened into another magnificent chamber. This one contained no trees, no rivers, no shelves, only an immense sky filled with floating spheres of crystal. Thousands of them, large and small. Each turned slowly in perfect harmony with the others. None ever touched. None drifted out of place. Every movement felt intentional, graceful, balanced. The keeper raised his eyes toward the nearest sphere. This memory belongs to a world where music was never invented. You looked at him with surprise. No music? He nodded. They discovered something even older. The nearest crystal sphere slowly descended. Its surface shimmered with tiny golden symbols. At first, they looked like numbers. Then, they began moving. Simple equations unfolded across the crystal. 1 became 2. 2 became 4. Curves transformed into spirals. Spirals blossomed into beautiful symmetrical patterns. The symbols flowed so smoothly. They almost seemed alive. The keeper reached out. His fingertips barely touched the sphere. The chamber dissolved into light. Moments later, you stood beneath an astonishing sky. Towering mountains of white crystal stretched toward brilliant blue heavens. Rivers flowed in perfect curves through broad green valleys. The trees grew with flawless symmetry. Every leaf reflected sunlight at exactly the same gentle angle. Nothing appeared artificial. Everything simply existed, with quiet elegance. Far below, a city rested among the mountains. Its buildings curved gracefully like seashells. Domes shimmered beneath soft sunlight. Bridges arched across rivers in beautiful mathematical proportions. The entire city resembled a living equation. The keeper smiled. They believed beauty was simply mathematics made visible. You descended toward the city. Its inhabitants welcomed you with warm smiles. None spoke. Instead, each gently placed a hand over their heart. The gesture felt peaceful, respectful. Then, one young woman stepped forward. She looked toward the keeper. Her eyes sparkled kindly. Without saying a single word, she drew a small circle in the air with her fingertip. Instantly, the crystal buildings around you began glowing. Soft waves of light spread outward. The mountains answered. The rivers shimmered. Even the trees seemed to respond. You felt the vibrations beneath your feet. Not through sound, through harmony. The keeper watched quietly. She just introduced herself. You blinked. With a circle? He nodded. Geometry was their voice. The young woman smiled. She drew another symbol. This time, a graceful spiral. Immediately, the wind changed. Flower petals rose gently into the air. Birds altered their flight. The river created delicate ripples that reflected sunlight into thousands of tiny rainbows. Nothing obeyed her. Everything simply responded. The keeper whispered. Every shape carried meaning. They did not speak to nature. They spoke with it. You walked through the peaceful streets. Children played beside crystal fountains. Instead of singing, they arranged smooth stones into beautiful patterns. Each design created gentle waves of light that drifted upward into the sky. An elderly man sat beneath a flowering tree. He slowly carved elegant curves into a piece of white stone. Nearby, another person smiled quietly, adding a single line. The sculpture immediately felt complete. No discussion. No disagreement. Only shared understanding. The keeper paused before a circular hall. Its roof opened toward the heavens. At the center floated an enormous crystal suspended in midair. Hundreds of citizens sat quietly around it. No one moved. No one spoke. The crystal slowly began to glow. One soft pulse. Then another. Then many. The light spread through the entire city. Every building answered. Every bridge. Every mountain. The whole world began shimmering together. You closed your eyes. Although no sound reached your ears, your heart recognized a melody. Gentle. Infinite. Peaceful. The keeper smiled. This is how they held concerts. You laughed softly. I can almost hear it. You are. He nodded kindly. Not every song needs ears. The crystal continued glowing. Its patterns became increasingly complex. Fractals blossomed across its surface. Golden spirals expanded into endless symmetrical flowers. Every movement remained perfectly balanced. Nothing repeated. Yet nothing felt chaotic. The navigator whispered, I visited many worlds, but nowhere else has silence sounded so beautiful. Time drifted gently onward. The crystals slowly dimmed. The gathering ended. People smiled to one another before quietly returning home. No applause. No announcement. The experience itself had been enough. The keeper led you toward a quiet hillside overlooking the city. As evening approached, the mountains reflected shades of amber and violet. Above, countless stars appeared. The citizens looked upward together. One child traced tiny constellations with her finger. The stars answered. Lines of golden light connected them across the sky. The entire galaxy became a magnificent geometric tapestry. You stared upward in wonder. They mapped the universe? The keeper smiled. They listened to it. He gently drew a spiral in the air. Far away, one lonely star brightened. Moments later, another answered. Then another. Just as they had in the chamber of stars. The universe itself was still singing. The people of this world had simply learned how to join the chorus. You remained upon the hillside long after darkness arrived. No one hurried away. The stars continued weaving silent music above the mountains. The keeper finally stood. There is one final lesson waiting. He looked toward a distant archway glowing with deep crimson light. Warm rays spilled gently across the grass like the final light of evening. He smiled. Tomorrow, he whispered, we will witness the last sunset of a dying giant star. The city behind you continued glowing softly beneath the constellations. Every bridge, every home, every crystal tower. Together, they formed one final equation. Not of numbers, but of harmony. A reminder that somewhere in the universe, even silence could become a song. The crimson archway glowed quietly beneath the evening sky. Its warm light stretched gently across the crystal hillside. For a few peaceful moments, no one spoke. The silent music of the mathematical world continued echoing softly within your thoughts. The keeper turned toward the glowing passage. There is a place, he said gently, where endings are celebrated as beautifully as beginnings. Together, you stepped through. A warm breeze welcomed you. It carried the scent of dry earth, wild flowers, and distant rain. When the light faded, you found yourself standing upon the crest of a quiet hill. Golden grass swayed gently around you. Rolling fields stretched toward a distant horizon. Far below, a small village rested beside a calm river. Smoke drifted lazily from stone chimneys. Children chased one another through open meadows. Old friends shared tea beneath flowering trees. Nothing seemed unusual. Nothing felt hurried. The world moved with the slow rhythm of a peaceful afternoon. Yet something above drew your eyes. The sun. It was enormous. Far larger than the sun above Earth. Its deep crimson light bathed everything in warm shades of amber and ruby. The sky glowed with gentle oranges fading into violet. The keeper smiled. This world circles a red giant. You gazed upward. The immense star filled nearly a quarter of the sky. Its surface moved slowly like glowing oceans of fire. Gentle waves of light rolled across it. Beautiful. Patient. Ancient. It is very old. The keeper nodded. It has shined. For nearly 10 billion years. You stood quietly beneath its warm light. There was no harsh heat. Only a comforting warmth that touched your face like the final rays of autumn. The three of you walked toward the village. Its people greeted you with quiet smiles. An elderly man was carefully carving small wooden birds. Nearby, a young girl helped him paint delicate golden feathers upon each one. Neither hurried. Both smiled often. The keeper accepted one of the tiny birds. It is beautiful. The old man nodded. We're making enough for everyone. You looked around. Dozens of families were creating gifts. Some baked bread. Some painted lanterns. Others prepared long wooden tables beneath flowering trees. The atmosphere felt joyful. almost festive. What are they celebrating? You asked. The keeper looked toward the crimson sun. Their final sunset. You stopped walking. The final. He nodded gently. The star has reached the end of its life. You expected sadness, fear, panic. Instead, children continued laughing beside the river. Musicians tuned simple stringed instruments. Neighbors embraced one another warmly. No one appeared afraid. The keeper noticed your expression. They have known this day would come. For generations. So they chose to spend it together. The afternoon drifted slowly onward. Families gathered in open fields. Fresh bread filled the air with comforting warmth. Tea steamed gently in handmade cups. Stories passed from grandparents to children. Not stories of loss. Stories of gratitude. One elderly woman smiled as she watched the great crimson sun. It has kept us warm for so long. She closed her eyes briefly. We should thank it. As evening approached, the entire village climbed the grassy hills. Thousands of tiny lanterns were placed along winding paths. Their golden flames danced softly in the gentle breeze. The keeper sat quietly upon the hillside. You joined him. The navigator settled nearby. No words were needed. The enormous red giant slowly descended toward the horizon. Its light became softer, richer. The fields glowed like rivers of amber. Every blade of grass shimmered. Every flower reflected deep ruby colors. The river became liquid gold. You had never seen a sunset so beautiful. Music began. Simple wooden flutes. Gentle strings. Quiet voices humming together. Not a farewell. A thank you. The melody drifted peacefully across the valley. The keeper whispered. They believe. Every ending deserves kindness. The great star continued sinking. Its lower edge touched the distant mountains. Warm light spread across the clouds one final time. The entire sky became a masterpiece of crimson, orange, rose, and violet. Children held their parents' hands. Friends leaned gently against one another. No tears. Only grateful smiles. One little boy looked toward the sky. Thank you. He spoke so softly. Yet somehow the entire valley seemed to hear. Thousands of voices quietly joined him. Thank you. Not to fate. Not to destiny. But to the star itself. The keeper closed his eyes. For several moments, only the music remained. The final edge of the giant star slipped below the horizon. Darkness arrived gently. Not suddenly. The stars above awakened one by one. The lanterns along the hills glowed brighter. The village remained silent. Peacefully silent. Then, something extraordinary happened. Far beyond the horizon, the red giant released one final pulse of light. A magnificent ribbon of crimson spread across the heavens. It illuminated every cloud, every river, every face. The entire sky shimmered as though the star itself were smiling one last time. The villagers looked upward. No one spoke. The moment belonged entirely to the universe. Slowly, the crimson light faded. Night settled across the valley. The keeper finally opened his eyes. "It is gone." You nodded quietly. Yet somehow, it did not feel like loss. The warmth remained. In the fields, in the music, in the memories shared around the long wooden tables. The star had disappeared. Its kindness had not. The keeper stood. The library preserves this evening. Not because a star died. He smiled warmly. But because an entire world chose gratitude instead of fear. The lanterns continued glowing across the hills. Some floated gently into the night sky. Tiny golden lights rising toward countless distant stars. Perhaps one day, their light would reach another traveler. Another world. Another quiet evening. The keeper looked toward a narrow path beyond the hillside. It shimmered with soft silver light beneath the stars. A single small figure could be seen walking in the distance. A child. Alone. Looking upward with quiet wonder. The keeper smiled. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "you will meet the child who counted galaxies. Behind you, the last sunset of the ancient red giant continued shining forever within the library. A perfect reminder that even the greatest stars leave behind light long after they have gently slipped beyond the horizon." The silver path stretched quietly beneath the stars. Behind you, the warm lanterns of the little village slowly faded into the distance. The final sunset of the red giant still lingered in your thoughts. Its light had disappeared. Yet its kindness remained. The keeper walked at his familiar unhurried pace. The navigator followed with hands folded behind their back. No one felt the need to speak. Sometimes, silence carried stories more gently than words. The silver pathway curved around a quiet hillside. Tiny flowers glowed beside the trail. Each blossom opened only when starlight touched its petals. Millions of tiny lights shimmered across the meadow. It felt as though the ground itself had become another sky. The keeper paused. There, far ahead, a small observatory rested upon the highest hill. It was remarkably simple. A round stone building. A wooden door. A single telescope pointing patiently toward the heavens. No towering domes. No complicated machinery. Only quiet curiosity. Soft light glowed from the window. Someone was awake. As you approached, the door slowly opened. A child stepped outside. Perhaps 10 years old. Perhaps younger. It was impossible to tell. The child smiled warmly, as though expecting your arrival. "Good evening." The voice was gentle. The keeper bowed his head. "Good evening." The child looked toward the sky before speaking again. "I almost finished." You glanced upward. "Finished what?" The child pointed toward the countless stars. "Counting. The keeper smiled knowingly. I see. You couldn't help but laugh softly. There are too many stars to count. The child nodded. I know. But that isn't why I count them. The answer lingered. Simple. Peaceful. The child invited you inside. The observatory contained almost nothing. One wooden chair. A small desk. Shelves filled with handwritten notebooks. A kettle quietly warming above a tiny stove. And beside the telescope, hundreds of carefully stacked journals, each labeled with a single year. The earliest looked very old. The newest still lay open. The child gently placed another tiny mark upon the final page. There. Tonight is finished. You looked at the notebook. Every page contained little dots, tiny circles, simple sketches of constellations, notes written with extraordinary care. No complicated equations, only observations. The blue star blinked twice. The spiral galaxy looked brighter. A comet passed quietly. The moon smiled tonight. The keeper turned a page with great respect. Beautiful. The child smiled shyly. I didn't want them to feel unnoticed. You looked toward the telescope. So you count. To remember? The child nodded. Every night. I greet them. The room became wonderfully quiet. Outside, the stars continued shining above the little observatory. The child poured warm tea into 4 small cups. I've never missed a night. The keeper accepted his cup. Not even once? The child thought for a moment. I slept through one storm. A gentle laugh filled the room. I apologized the next evening. The keeper laughed too. I'm sure the stars understood. The child looked through the telescope. Maybe. Still, I wanted to say sorry. The sincerity felt almost sacred. You stepped toward the telescope. May I? Of course. You looked through the polished lens. Instead of one distant galaxy, you saw hundreds, then thousands. The telescope somehow revealed layer after layer of the universe. Spiral galaxies drifted silently through the darkness. Elliptical galaxies shimmered like golden islands. Tiny dwarf galaxies circled giants with quiet patience. The universe stretched endlessly, beautiful beyond words. You slowly stepped back. I've never seen so many. The child smiled. I haven't either. You looked at the notebook. But you've counted them. The child shook their head gently. No. I've greeted them. Another silence settled over the room. Outside, a meteor drifted gracefully across the heavens. The child waved. Good evening. The keeper watched with warm eyes. You never expect an answer? The child smiled. I receive one every night. You frowned slightly. How? The child pointed toward the window. They keep shining. The answer was so innocent, so quietly wise. That no one spoke for several moments. The keeper finally stood. "There is something I'd like to show you." The child nodded eagerly. Together, the four of you climbed a narrow staircase leading onto the roof. The night sky surrounded the observatory in every direction. No cities. No lights. Only the vast universe stretching endlessly above. The keeper raised one hand. A tiny golden light appeared above his palm. It floated upward. Higher. Higher still. Until it joined the countless stars. Immediately, one distant galaxy brightened ever so slightly. Then another. Then another. The child smiled. They noticed. The keeper looked toward you. Curiosity travels farther than light. You watched the galaxies shimmering gently across the sky. Perhaps somewhere, someone else was looking back. Another child. Another traveler. Another quiet soul wondering who might be watching from the darkness. The keeper rested one hand upon the old telescope. This observatory disappeared millions of years ago. You looked around in surprise. It felt so alive. So why preserve it? The keeper smiled. Because wonder should never become extinct. The child carefully closed the newest notebook. It joined the long row of journals stretching back through countless peaceful evenings. So many years. You whispered. The child nodded. I never finished counting. The keeper smiled warmly. That was never the goal. Together, you stood beneath the endless stars. No one counted. No one measured. No one hurried. The galaxies simply continued shining. Exactly as they always had. Exactly as they always would. At the edge of the rooftop, another quiet pathway slowly appeared. This one climbed toward distant mountains wrapped in pale blue mist. The peaks rose so high, they seemed to touch the constellations themselves. The keeper followed your gaze. There is one mountain, he said softly, that has watched every sunrise since before time learned to keep its own memories. He smiled gently. Tomorrow, we climbed the mountain older than time. The child waved as you began walking down the silver path. Good night. Then, looking once more toward the heavens, the child whispered the same words to every galaxy above. One by one, the stars answered. Not with voices, but with their quiet, unwavering light. The silver path slowly climbed into the pale blue mist. Behind you, the little observatory became a single warm light beneath the endless stars. The child remained on the rooftop, still looking upward, still greeting the galaxies one by one. Long after the hill disappeared from view, you found yourself smiling. The keeper noticed. Wonder, he said quietly, is one of the few things that becomes larger when shared. The path continued rising. The air grew cooler. Not cold. Fresh. Every breath carried the scent of stone after gentle rain. The mountains ahead slowly emerged from the mist. At first, they appeared ordinary. Gray peaks, snow resting quietly upon their highest ridges. Gentle waterfalls threading down ancient cliffs. Then, you realized something. The mountains did not cast shadows. Instead, the shadows seemed to gather around them, as though light itself treated these peaks with quiet respect. The keeper stopped beside a crystal stream. Its water flowed without making a sound. He knelt, lifting a small stone from the riverbed. The stone shimmered faintly with silver veins. "This mountain," he whispered, "was already old. When many galaxies were still young." You looked toward the highest summit. "How is that possible?" The keeper smiled. "Not everything began where you expect." He gently returned the stone to the stream. The ripples spread outward. For a brief moment, the water reflected not your faces, but a sky filled with newborn stars. Then the vision quietly faded. The climb became steeper. Yet strangely, your steps felt lighter. There were no loose rocks, no difficult ledges. The mountain seemed to guide every traveler gently upward. Along the trail, small white flowers grew between the stones. Each blossom opened only when someone passed nearby. After you walked on, they quietly closed again. The navigator touched one delicate petal. They bloomed for visitors. The keeper nodded. They believe every journey deserves a welcome. A gentle breeze drifted across the cliffs. It carried no leaves. Instead, countless tiny fragments of light floated through the air. Not bright, just enough to shimmer softly around the ancient stones. You watched one settle upon a weathered boulder. Immediately, faint golden lines appeared across its surface. Curves, circles, ancient markings. The keeper smiled. "The mountain remembers." He placed his hand upon the stone. "This mark was left by the gravity of a passing galaxy. More than 11 billion years ago." You stared in quiet amazement. The mountain had become a diary, written not by hands, but by the universe itself. Higher still, the trees slowly disappeared. Only smooth stones surrounded the winding path. Yet the mountain never felt empty. It felt patient. Every cliff, every ridge, every silent peak carried the quiet confidence of something that had witnessed ages beyond imagination. Eventually, the trail opened onto a broad plateau. At its center rested a single stone bench. No carvings, no decorations. Simply a place to sit. The keeper smiled. "This is my favorite place." The four of you sat together. Before you, the entire universe seemed to unfold. Countless galaxies drifted through the darkness. Nebulae blossomed like flowers of light. Clusters of ancient stars shimmered beyond the edge of sight. No observatory on any world could offer such a view. The mountain stood above memory itself. For several peaceful minutes, no one spoke. The silence felt complete. Then, the mountain trembled. Not violently, gently, like someone taking a slow breath. You looked toward the keeper. He nodded. It is awake. The stone beneath your feet slowly warmed. Across the plateau, thin lines of golden light began flowing through tiny cracks in the rock. The patterns spread outward, joining together, forming enormous circles that covered the entire summit. You watched the glowing lines carefully. They resembled the rings of an ancient tree. Except these circles measured not years, but epochs. Every ring represented an age of the universe. The keeper whispered, "The mountain counts differently. Not days, not centuries, but beginnings." One of the glowing circles brightened. Immediately, the sky above transformed. You witnessed the birth of a distant galaxy. Clouds of hydrogen slowly gathered. Stars awakened one after another. Their combined light illuminated the surrounding darkness. Then, another circle glowed. A new vision appeared. A lonely planet cooled beneath gentle rain. The first oceans formed. The first clouds drifted across unfamiliar skies. Another ring brightened. A civilization built its first observatory. Another. A traveler looked up and wondered whether they were alone. The visions came and went. Never hurried. Never overlapping. The mountain remembered every beginning that had ever touched its existence. Finally, the last glowing ring shimmered. You expected another ancient memory. Instead, you saw Earth. Blue oceans. White clouds. Children laughing beneath summer skies. Someone planting a tree. Someone reading beneath a window during the rain. Someone quietly watching the stars from a rooftop. The keeper smiled. The mountain does not measure importance. It measures wonder. A beginning was still a beginning. Whether it belonged to a galaxy or a single kind act. The golden circles slowly faded. The summit returned to peaceful stillness. A lone bird crossed the sky. Its wings caught the starlight before disappearing beyond the cliffs. The keeper stood. There is one more place. He walked toward the highest point of the mountain. Resting there, upon a simple stone pedestal, lay a single closed book. Unlike every other book in the library, this one had no light, no color, no symbols. Its cover was pure white, completely blank. You looked toward the keeper. What story is inside? He smiled gently. No one knows. Not even you? He shook his head. I have never opened it. Why? Because it has not finished writing itself. The blank cover shimmered almost imperceptibly, as though breathing, waiting, patiently. The keeper rested his fingertips lightly upon it. This book, he whispered, has no final page. A soft breeze crossed the summit. The white cover fluttered ever so slightly. Somewhere within, a single page quietly turned by itself. The keeper looked toward you with the same gentle smile he had worn since the beginning of your journey. Tomorrow, he said softly. "We will open the book without an ending." Behind you, the mountain older than time continued watching over galaxies, stars, and countless quiet beginnings, never judging how large they were, only remembering that every story, no matter how small, had once started with a single step. The white book rested quietly upon the stone pedestal. Morning had no meaning on the mountain. Yet the light had changed. The stars still shimmered above. Soft dawn colors rested along the distant horizon. It was as though every hour existed together here. The keeper remained silent. He did not immediately reach for the book. Instead, he sat beside the pedestal. The navigator joined him. You followed. For a long while, the four of you simply watched the universe. Galaxies drifted with patient grace. Nebulae unfolded like blossoms opening in slow motion. Far below, the endless library glowed with countless golden lights. The keeper finally spoke. Most stories end. He smiled gently. They reach the final page. The cover closes, and the memory becomes complete. His gaze rested upon the white book. But not this one. A gentle breeze stirred the blank cover. It moved almost like a quiet breath. Alive. Waiting. You looked closely. The book remained perfectly white. No title. No author's name. No symbol. Only possibility. The keeper carefully lifted it from the pedestal. It felt surprisingly light. Almost weightless. He placed it in your hands. Immediately, you noticed something unusual. The book felt warm. Not from the keeper's touch. From within itself. As though countless tiny heartbeats rested beneath its cover. Open it. His voice was little more than a whisper. You slowly lifted the first page. It was blank. The second page, also blank. The third, the fourth, the fifth. Every page remained untouched. No ink. No light. Nothing. You looked toward the keeper. It hasn't been written. He smiled. It has. You frowned slightly. I don't understand. Instead of answering, the keeper gently closed the book. The moment the cover touched the final page, a single line of golden light appeared. It shimmered softly across the paper. Then another. Then another. Words began writing themselves. Not quickly. Not slowly. Simply. At their own perfect pace. You watched in silent wonder. The sentence completed itself. A traveler climbed an ancient mountain in search of a story. You looked around. The mountain. The library. The keeper. The words described this very moment. Another sentence appeared. The mountain welcomed the traveler with silence. Then another. The stars listened. The keeper nodded. The book writes only what becomes true. The page continued glowing. without anyone touching it. A new paragraph quietly formed. It described the breeze passing over the summit, the distant cry of a lone bird, the warm light resting upon the stone. Everything unfolding exactly as it happened. Not predicting, not remembering, recording the present. You turned another page. Blank. Then, as you watched, new words slowly appeared. The page was catching up with the moment. The navigator smiled. It is always a little behind, so that life can stay ahead. You laughed softly. For the first time, a book seemed almost shy. It never rushed to finish. It simply followed. The keeper began walking across the summit. You carried the book with you. Every few steps, another sentence quietly appeared. When the wind changed, the page changed. When clouds drifted across the distant galaxies, the story welcomed them too. Nothing was considered too small. Nothing too ordinary. Everything belonged. Eventually, you reached the edge of the mountain. Far below, the endless library stretched beyond imagination. Millions of glowing shelves, rivers of golden light, floating stairways disappearing into the horizon. You looked down in awe. The book grew slightly warmer. Another sentence appeared. The traveler realized that wonder never asked permission to exist. You paused. The words felt strangely personal. Not because they were about you, because they could belong to anyone. Anyone willing to look carefully. The keeper leaned against an ancient stone. Many visitors believe this book tells the future. He shook his head gently. It doesn't. It simply refuses to believe the story has ended. The sentence settled quietly within you. How many people spent their lives believing their best chapters were already behind them? This book suggested otherwise. Every page remained open. Every moment could become another beginning. A tiny butterfly drifted across the summit. Its wings shimmered with pale silver light. It landed briefly upon the edge of the book. A new sentence appeared. Even the smallest visitor found a place in the story. The butterfly lifted away. The ink stopped. The page waited. Patiently. Always patiently. The keeper smiled. You see? The story never chases life. It walks beside it. Hours passed unnoticed. The book continued writing. Sometimes only one sentence in many minutes. Sometimes several pages at once. Whenever something meaningful happened, the words quietly welcomed it. Whenever nothing happened, the pages rested peacefully. Silence also deserved its place. As evening slowly approached, the final rays of distant starlight bathed the mountain in soft gold. The keeper gently accepted the book from your hands. He closed it once more. The writing immediately stopped. The remaining pages stayed blank. Thousands of them. Perhaps millions. Waiting. Always waiting. He returned the book to its simple pedestal. It has been here. Since the library first opened. You looked at the endless blank pages. It will never be finished. The keeper nodded. Nor should it. The mountain breeze carried the scent of snow and wildflowers. Far away, the stars continued their quiet conversations. Life moved gently onward, exactly as the book preferred. The keeper turned toward a descending path hidden behind the summit. Unlike every trail before, this one glowed with soft golden light that seemed to come from nowhere at all. The air became warmer, more familiar, as though memories themselves were waiting below. He smiled with quiet kindness. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "I will show you a room where every peaceful memory finds a home." The white book remained upon the pedestal, its cover still blank, its pages still waiting. Not because the story was unfinished, but because the universe, with infinite patience, was still becoming. The golden path descended gently from the mountain. Behind you, the white book remained upon its quiet pedestal. Its blank pages waited patiently for tomorrow, and every tomorrow that would follow. The air became warmer with every step. The scent of snow slowly gave way to cedar, lavender, and freshly brewed tea. The library slowly emerged once more from the golden mist. Its endless towers shimmered beneath soft light. Floating stairways drifted gracefully between distant halls. Millions of books rested peacefully upon shelves that seemed to have no beginning and no end. The keeper walked without speaking. His footsteps echoed softly across polished stone. The navigator smiled quietly. "We're almost there." You noticed something different. The deeper you entered the library, the quieter your thoughts became. Not because they disappeared, because they no longer needed to hurry. Ahead, a small wooden door appeared between two enormous shelves. It looked surprisingly ordinary. No glowing symbols, no towering archway, no magnificent decorations. Simply an old oak door, with a small brass handle polished by countless gentle hands. Above it, a single sentence shimmered in tiny golden letters. "Only peace may enter." The keeper rested his hand upon the handle. "This room is smaller than most visitors expect." He opened the door. Warm light spilled quietly into the hallway. You stepped inside. Immediately, the endless library vanished. The room was indeed small, no larger than a cozy cottage. A fireplace crackled softly against one wall. Comfortable chairs surrounded a low wooden table. Shelves held simple objects rather than books. A seashell, a worn scarf, a child's marble, a pressed flower, a tiny paper boat. Sunlight drifted through round windows overlooking an endless field of golden grass. The room felt familiar, as though you had visited it many years ago. The keeper smiled. "Welcome to the room of quiet memories." You looked around. There are no books. He nodded. Some memories do not wish to become stories. They only wish to be felt. A small kettle rested above the fireplace. Without anyone touching it, it quietly began to whistle. The navigator laughed softly. It always knows. The keeper poured warm tea into 4 simple cups. The aroma filled the room. Chamomile, honey, a hint of fresh mint. The kind of tea someone might make on a rainy afternoon. You sat beside the window. Outside, the golden fields swayed gently beneath an invisible breeze. Far in the distance, children chased glowing butterflies through the tall grass. Their laughter drifted softly into the room. It sounded strangely familiar. The keeper noticed. Do they remind you of someone? You thought for a moment. I'm not sure. He smiled. You don't need to be. The room remembers. Before the mind does. Silence settled comfortably around the table. No one felt the need to fill it. The fire crackled. Tea steamed gently. Outside, the butterflies continued dancing across the field. The keeper stood and walked toward the nearest shelf. He carefully picked up an old wooden music box. Its surface showed tiny scratches from many years of gentle use. He placed it upon the table. Without winding it, the music box slowly began to play. A simple melody filled the room. Soft, unhurried, beautifully ordinary. The moment you heard it, something stirred deep inside you. Not a clear memory, only a feeling. The comfort of home, the warmth of being welcomed, the quiet safety of someone saying, "You're here." The melody ended. The room remained silent for a few moments longer. The keeper gently closed the lid. Not every memory belongs to one person. He looked toward the little music box. Some belong to being human. You nodded slowly. That explained why everything here felt so familiar. Not because you had lived these moments, but because someone, somewhere, had. The keeper moved toward another shelf. This time, he lifted a smooth white seashell. It looked perfectly ordinary. He handed it to you. You held it carefully beside your ear. Instead of ocean waves, you heard something else. Pages turning in a quiet library. Rain tapping against a window. A kettle beginning to boil. Someone laughing gently in another room. Simple sounds. Peaceful sounds. Everyday sounds. The keeper smiled. This shell remembers. Ordinary happiness. You closed your eyes. For a few moments, nothing existed except those quiet little moments that so often passed unnoticed. When you opened your eyes again, the room somehow felt even warmer. The fireplace glowed softly. Sunlight stretched across the wooden floor. Dust floated lazily through golden beams of light. Even the silence seemed grateful. The keeper looked toward the far corner of the room. There stood an empty chair. No one sat there. Yet somehow, it never felt lonely. Who was that chair for? You asked quietly. The keeper followed your gaze. For whoever needs it. He smiled gently. Sometimes, people carry memories they haven't had time to rest beside. You understood. The chair was not waiting for someone important. It was waiting for anyone. The room welcomed every quiet heart. No questions. No judgments. Only kindness. The afternoon drifted by almost unnoticed. You spoke very little. No one seemed to mind. Outside, the sunlight slowly softened into amber. The butterflies disappeared into the tall grass. Tiny lanterns of light began appearing across the endless field, like stars choosing to bloom upon the earth. The keeper stood. There is one final room, he whispered, before our journey home begins. He opened another small wooden door hidden beside the fireplace. Beyond it, a gentle blue light shimmered softly. Unlike every hall before, this one felt wonderfully familiar. Almost like home. The keeper smiled. Tomorrow, I will show you the shelf reserved for Earth. You looked back one last time. The room of quiet memories remained exactly as you found it. The tea still warm. The fire still glowing. The empty chair still waiting patiently. A peaceful reminder that even the smallest moments, a shared cup of tea, a quiet melody, or the sound of rain upon a window, could become treasures, worthy of the greatest library in the universe. The little wooden door closed quietly behind you. The warmth of the fireplace faded into memory. Yet somehow, you still carried it with you. The blue corridor ahead glowed with a gentle light. Not bright enough to guide your steps, only enough to remind you that you were never walking alone. The keeper moved slowly through the peaceful hallway. His hand brushed lightly across the stone wall. Tiny stars awakened beneath his fingertips, one after another, like old friends greeting him as he passed. The navigator smiled. This hall changes. You looked around. It does? It remembers whoever walks through it. The walls shimmered softly. For a brief moment, you thought you saw familiar places. A quiet beach at sunrise. Rain falling against a bedroom window. A child reading beneath a blanket with a flashlight. Someone watching snow through a kitchen window while a kettle gently whistled nearby. The images appeared, then faded again. The keeper glanced toward them. The library borrows memories. Only the peaceful ones. The corridor widened into a magnificent circular hall. Unlike every chamber before, this one seemed almost endless. Shelves curved gently around the room like the rings of an ancient tree. Each shelf carried the name of a different world. Some names glowed in brilliant silver. Others shimmered in colors you had never seen before. Some were written in languages made of light. Others seemed to exist without letters at all. Every civilization, every forgotten moon, every quiet village beneath unfamiliar stars, each had its own place. The keeper stood silently at the center. Then, he began walking toward a modest shelf near the far wall. It was neither the tallest nor the brightest. No golden decorations surrounded it. No magnificent light poured from its books. It simply waited. Patiently. Above it, one word was written in soft blue letters. Earth. You stopped. Somehow. That simple word carried more weight than all the galaxies you had seen. The keeper rested his hand gently upon the shelf. This is home. Rows of books stretched before you. Thousands of them. None looked extraordinary. Some were beautifully bound. Others appeared worn from countless readings. A few had handwritten labels. One was held together with faded string. Another still carried grains of sand between its pages. The keeper smiled. No world writes more ordinary stories than Earth. You looked at him. And that's important? He laughed softly. It is priceless. He carefully removed a small blue book. Its cover showed a simple wooden bench beneath a tree. No title. No author's name. He opened it. The pages filled with quiet scenes. A grandfather teaching his granddaughter how to tie her shoes. Friends laughing during a summer picnic. A woman watering flowers before sunrise. Someone waiting patiently at a train station. A father carrying a sleeping child home after a long day. Nothing dramatic. Nothing famous. Only life. The keeper turned another page. An elderly couple sat together on a porch. Neither spoke. They simply watched the rain. The page glowed warmly. They sat there. For nearly 40 years. The keeper smiled. Every time it rained, you found yourself smiling too. The story needed nothing more. Another book rested nearby. Its cover carried the image of an old bicycle. Inside, a young boy learned to ride for the first time. He fell, laughed, tried again. His mother applauded. His father quietly picked up the bicycle without saying a word. The memory lasted only 3 pages. Yet somehow, it felt as meaningful as the birth of galaxies. The keeper closed the book gently. The library treasures greatness. He looked around the quiet shelf. But it treasures gentleness even more. The navigator wandered farther along the row. So many books. The keeper nodded. Every peaceful life leaves at least one. You slowly walked beside the shelves. Titles appeared only as you looked at them. The last letter never sent. The morning the garden bloomed again. Tea for 2 during the first snow. The bench beside the river. The dog who waited every evening. Each title shimmered briefly, then quietly faded. None demanded attention. They simply waited for whoever needed them. You paused before one particularly small volume. It was no larger than the palm of your hand. The cover showed a paper airplane. The keeper noticed. Go ahead. You opened it carefully. Inside, a little girl folded paper airplanes with her grandfather every Sunday afternoon. Nothing else happened. Page after page. They simply folded airplanes. Some flew. Some didn't. They laughed anyway. The final page showed an empty chair beside the window. Years later, the girl folded one more airplane. She smiled toward the quiet afternoon sky and gently let it fly. The book ended. No sadness. Only gratitude. You closed it slowly. The keeper spoke so softly you almost missed his words. Love often hides inside ordinary routines. Silence returned. It was the kind of silence found in libraries, old churches, and quiet forests after rain. A silence that never asked to be broken. At the very end of the shelf, one space remained empty. No book rested there. Only a simple wooden plaque. It read, "Still being written." You looked toward the keeper. He smiled knowingly. Every visitor asks, "Whose book is missing?" The keeper's eyes reflected the gentle blue light surrounding the hall. "It belongs to whoever is standing here." You looked once more at the empty place. Nothing waited there. Not yet. One day, perhaps many years from now, a book would quietly appear. Not because someone had become famous, or powerful, or remembered by history, but because somewhere, someone had lived with kindness. And the library believed that was always worth preserving. The keeper gently returned the blue book to its place. The shelf glowed softly for a moment, as though grateful. Then the light settled once more. Far beyond the hall, another doorway slowly appeared. This one shimmered with pale silver mist. It carried no scent, no sound, only an extraordinary sense of peace. The keeper turned toward it. His smile was quieter than ever. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we will visit the place where every journey pauses before becoming a memory." The blue shelf remained behind you, filled not with heroes, or kings, or conquerors, but with quiet afternoons, gentle conversations, shared laughter, and countless ordinary moments that together had become the true story of Earth. The silver mist drifted gently through the open doorway. Behind you, the shelf reserved for Earth rested quietly among countless worlds. Its simple books remained exactly where they belonged, waiting patiently. The keeper stepped into the mist. You followed. Immediately, every sound became softer. Even your footsteps seemed reluctant to disturb the silence. The corridor stretched ahead like a ribbon of pale moonlight. Its floor reflected no shadows. Its walls carried no shelves. Only countless tiny lights floating slowly through the air. Each glowed with its own quiet color. Some shone with warm amber, others with gentle blue. A few shimmered in soft lavender before fading into silver. They drifted peacefully around you, never colliding, never hurrying. The keeper reached out. One small light settled upon his open palm. It pulsed once, then quietly floated away again. What are they? You whispered. He watched the little light disappear into the distance. They are moments. You looked around. Moments? He nodded. The final peaceful moment. Before something becomes a memory. The words lingered gently in the quiet hall. You continued walking. One tiny light drifted past your shoulder. As it passed, you caught the faint scent of fresh bread. Another carried the sound of distant laughter. Another. The warmth of sunlight through an open window. None lasted more than a heartbeat. Yet each felt complete. The navigator smiled softly. I always forget how beautiful this place is. The keeper looked upward. It reminds us that memories are not born all at once. They arrive very gently. The mist slowly parted. Ahead, an enormous chamber opened before you. It contained no ceiling, only an endless sky filled with slow-moving clouds of silver light. Floating throughout the hall were thousands of transparent mirrors. Large, small, round, oval. Each reflected something different. One showed an elderly woman closing the cover of a beloved book. Another reflected a child releasing a kite into the wind. A third showed two old friends smiling quietly across a chessboard. No sadness. No endings. Only peaceful final moments before time gently carried them into memory. The keeper stopped before one small mirror. Its surface shimmered like calm water. Inside, a father tucked a blanket around his sleeping daughter. He quietly kissed her forehead, turned off the light, closed the door halfway. The image faded. The mirror became clear once more. That was all? You asked. The keeper smiled. That was enough. He looked at the empty mirror. Some moments never become famous. They simply become unforgettable. You wandered among the floating mirrors. Each held only a few seconds. A woman placing flowers beside a photograph. A teacher erasing the last lesson from a chalkboard. Snow falling outside a quiet cafe as someone finished the final page of a novel. A sailor watching dawn from the deck of a peaceful ship. Tiny fragments of ordinary life, each preserved with extraordinary care. One mirror caught your attention. It reflected a small wooden bench beneath an old oak tree. No one sat there. Leaves drifted gently onto the seat. The afternoon sunlight slowly shifted across the grass. Nothing happened. For several moments, only the breeze moved. Then the image disappeared. You turned toward the keeper. There wasn't anyone. He nodded. The bench remembered. Silence settled once again. You realized places also carried memories. A favorite chair. A quiet path. A window where someone had watched the rain for years. The universe remembered them all. The keeper continued deeper into the hall. At its center floated the largest mirror of all. Its surface reflected not a single moment, but the stars themselves. Galaxies drifted quietly across the glass. Nebulae bloomed like gentle flowers. The entire universe seemed to breathe. The keeper rested one hand against its surface. This mirror has only one purpose. What does it show? He smiled. It shows what every traveler leaves behind. The mirror slowly brightened. You expected to see great achievements, adventures, historic discoveries. Instead, you saw tiny moments. Sharing tea, helping someone stand after they had fallen, listening without interrupting, watching a sunset beside a friend, smiling at a stranger, planting a young tree, reading a bedtime story. The little things. Always the little things. The keeper looked toward you. The universe keeps very different records than history does. You stood quietly before the great mirror. Somehow, that felt comforting. Perhaps no act of kindness was ever truly lost. Perhaps every gentle moment continued traveling, like starlight crossing the endless dark. The silver clouds above slowly drifted apart. Beyond them, a single bright doorway appeared. It glowed with warm white light. Unlike every doorway before, this one carried no mystery, only welcome. The keeper's eyes reflected its gentle glow. Our journey is nearly complete. His voice was calm. But before every traveler returns home, there is one final place. He began walking toward the light. The navigator followed. You took one last look at the hall between farewell and memory. The tiny floating lights continued their peaceful journey. The mirrors quietly guarded countless ordinary moments. Nothing asked to be remembered forever. Yet nothing was willing to be forgotten. As you stepped toward the white doorway, the keeper spoke one final sentence. So often, he whispered, the smallest goodbye becomes the longest memory. The doorway slowly opened. Warm light flowed across the silent hall. Somewhere beyond it, the final chapter was already waiting. The white doorway opened without a sound. Warm light welcomed you gently. Not bright, not dazzling, simply comforting. Behind you, the hall between farewell and memory slowly disappeared into the silver mist. Its countless mirrors continued protecting the quiet moments of the universe. Ahead, a garden stretched farther than the eye could see. Soft green hills rolled beneath a sky of pale gold. Ancient trees spread their branches over winding stone paths. Wildflowers bloomed in every direction. Their colors shifted gently with the changing light. A clear stream wandered peacefully through the grass. Its water moved so slowly, it almost seemed to be listening. The keeper smiled. This is the last place every traveler visits. You looked around. It feels, he nodded, like arriving home. The air carried the scent of jasmine, fresh rain, and warm earth after sunrise. Tiny butterflies drifted lazily from flower to flower. Birdsong floated through the branches. Nothing interrupted the quiet rhythm of the garden. No clocks. No footsteps echoing in haste. Only peace. The four of you followed the stone path. Every few steps, wooden benches appeared beneath flowering trees. Some were empty. Others were occupied by quiet travelers. A woman read an old book while a robin perched beside her. An elderly man smiled as he watched the stream. A child carefully floated paper boats across the water. No one seemed to be waiting for anything. They were simply present. The keeper noticed your curiosity. No one stays here forever. They remain only until their heart becomes quiet enough to continue. The path curved toward a great willow tree. Its silver branches touched the surface of a peaceful pond. The water reflected not the sky above, but countless different seasons. One side shimmered with spring blossoms. Another glowed with the colors of autumn. Nearby, gentle snow continued falling. Summer sunlight danced across the opposite shore. All seasons rested together, without conflict, without hurry. The keeper dipped his fingers into the pond. Tiny circles spread across the surface. The reflections slowly blended into one another. Time rests here. He whispered the words almost lovingly. It no longer needs to keep moving. You sat beneath the willow tree. The soft grass felt warm beneath your hands. For the first time since entering the library, you completely forgot to wonder where you would go next. The moment itself was enough. The navigator closed their eyes. I always lose track of time here. The keeper laughed softly. That is the idea. A gentle breeze stirred the willow branches. One silver leaf drifted downward. It landed in your open hand. Instead of fading, the leaf slowly transformed. Its silver veins became tiny lines of golden writing. One sentence appeared. Rest is also part of every journey. You smiled. The words remained only for a few seconds. Then the leaf became ordinary once more. You carefully released it into the breeze. It floated across the pond, joining hundreds of other silver leaves resting peacefully upon the water. The afternoon passed quietly. Or perhaps it was evening. Here, the light changed so gently that no beginning or ending could be found. The keeper poured tea from a small ceramic pot waiting upon a nearby stone table. You had not noticed it before. 4 simple cups, fresh bread, a bowl of ripe pears. Nothing luxurious. Everything perfect. No one hurried the meal. No conversation tried to fill the silence. Sometimes, someone smiled. Sometimes, someone simply looked toward the hills. Both felt equally meaningful. After a long while, the keeper stood. There is something I have never shown every traveler. He walked toward a narrow path hidden behind flowering bushes. The path led to a small hill overlooking the entire garden. At its summit stood a single swing, made of polished oak, suspended from the branch of an enormous tree. It moved gently in the breeze, though no one sat upon it. The keeper rested one hand against the rope. When the library becomes too quiet, he said softly, I come here. You? He nodded. And I remember that even those who guide journeys sometimes need to rest. For the first time, the keeper seemed less like an eternal guardian, more like an old friend. Someone who had spent countless ages helping others find wonder, while quietly carrying his own. The swing continued its gentle motion. Back. Forward. Back. Forward. Like calm breathing. The sun, if it could still be called the sun, slowly settled behind distant hills. Golden light flowed across the garden. Every flower glowed. Every tree stood quietly in gratitude. The stream reflected the first evening stars. The keeper looked toward the horizon. Tomorrow, he whispered, we return to the great library. His smile carried no sadness, only quiet certainty. Every journey must eventually become a memory. You looked across the endless garden one last time. The willow tree, the silver pond, the peaceful travelers, the little swing upon the hill. None of them asked you to stay. They simply reminded you that there would always be a place where weary hearts could pause before continuing their story. The breeze carried another silver leaf into the sky. It drifted upward, higher, higher still, until it became impossible to tell whether it was a leaf or simply another star. Morning arrived so gently. It was impossible to know when the night had ended. The garden where time came to rest remained peaceful behind you. Silver leaves drifted lazily across the quiet pond. The little swing beneath the ancient trees still moved softly with the breeze. Nothing had changed. Nothing needed to. The keeper stood at the beginning of the stone path. It is time. His voice carried the same quiet kindness it always had. No sadness. No urgency. Only invitation. Together, the four of you walked once more through the white doorway. Warm light surrounded every step. For a brief moment, the garden, the mountains, the oceans, the stars, all seemed to exist together. Then, the light slowly faded. The endless library welcomed you home. Its towering shelves stretched farther than imagination. Golden stairways floated peacefully through the air. Millions upon millions of books rested in perfect silence. Tiny lanterns drifted between the shelves like patient fireflies. Nothing here had changed either. The library had simply continued breathing. The keeper smiled. It has been waiting. You looked around. For us? He nodded. The library always waits. It never rushes a traveler. The familiar halls felt different now. Not because they had changed. Because you had. The shelf of earth. The first ocean. The ancient forest. The child who counted galaxies. The room of quiet memories. Every place now lived gently within you. The keeper walked toward the center of the great hall. There, an enormous circular table stood beneath a ceiling of endless stars. You had passed it before. Yet somehow, this was the first time you truly noticed it. Upon the table rested a single map. It was unlike any map you had ever seen. No borders. No countries. No oceans. Only countless paths of light crossing gently through the universe. Some were bright. Others barely visible. Each represented a journey. The keeper rested one hand upon the map. No traveler follows the same road. The lines of light slowly shifted. Some joined together. Others quietly drifted apart. None disappeared. Every journey continued somewhere beyond the edge of the map. The navigator pointed toward one faint silver path. It wasn't there before. The keeper smiled. It is now. You looked closer. The new path began at the library. It crossed the first ocean, passed beneath the oldest forest, climbed the ancient mountain, rested in the quiet garden, then continued onward into empty space, beyond every place you had visited, beyond the edge of the map itself. It isn't finished. You whispered. The keeper nodded. No true journey ever is. A peaceful silence settled over the hall. Around you, books quietly arranged themselves upon distant shelves. Floating ladders moved gently between towering rows. Somewhere nearby, a page turned by itself. The familiar sounds of the library felt almost like music now. The keeper slowly began walking again. He led you toward one final balcony overlooking the endless halls. From here, you could see rivers of golden light flowing through every level of the library. Travelers wandered quietly among the shelves. Some searched for forgotten histories. Others simply sat reading beside glowing windows. Every face carried the same expression. Wonder. The keeper folded his hands behind his back. When people imagine wisdom, he said softly, they often imagine knowing every answer. He looked across the endless library. But wisdom is learning to love the questions. You remained beside him, watching the gentle movement of countless lives. No one hurried. No one competed. Every traveler trusted that the right story would find them. A tiny bird landed upon the balcony railing. Its feathers shimmered with soft gold. It sang only 3 gentle notes, then flew away into the endless halls. The keeper smiled. It visits every morning. You know it? I've never asked its name. He laughed quietly. We've simply shared many peaceful mornings together. The answer felt perfectly natural. Not everything needed to be explained. Some things only needed to be appreciated. The great clock above the library chimed once. A deep, warm sound. Not marking an hour. Simply reminding every traveler that another beautiful moment had arrived. The keeper turned toward you. Our time together grows short. His words carried no sorrow. Only gratitude. There is one place left. He looked toward a staircase made entirely of gentle starlight. It rose higher than every shelf, higher than every tower. until it disappeared into brilliant white light. No books waited there. No doors. Only the sky. The keeper's smile became almost luminous. "Tomorrow," he whispered. We climbed to the highest balcony, where every journey begins again. Behind you, the endless library continued exactly as it always had, patiently preserving galaxies, oceans, gardens, ordinary afternoons, and quiet acts of kindness, waiting for the next traveler to open the next book. The staircase of starlight rose silently before you. Each step shimmered with a gentle silver glow. Behind you, the endless library stretched beyond imagination. Its countless halls rested peacefully beneath an endless sky of stars. The keeper began climbing. Not quickly. Not slowly. Simply. At the quiet pace the journey had always followed. You climbed beside him. The navigator followed a few steps behind. With every step, the library seemed to grow softer. The towering shelves became rivers of golden light. The floating lanterns resembled distant constellations. The voices of travelers faded into a comforting silence. Soon, there was only the staircase, the stars, and the endless sky. After what felt like both a moment and a lifetime, the final step appeared. The keeper stopped. Before you stretched the highest balcony in the library. It had no walls, no roof, no shelves, only a wide platform of white stone floating gently among the galaxies. The universe surrounded you completely. Spiral galaxies turned with graceful patience. Nebulae bloomed like flowers of light. Ancient stars shimmered beside newborn suns. Every lesson, every memory, every peaceful place you had visited seemed to exist together in this single breathtaking view. The keeper rested both hands upon the smooth railing. "This," he whispered, "is where I always bring travelers at the end." You stood quietly beside him. The silence felt familiar now. Not empty. Full. The keeper smiled. When you first arrived, you believed the library was filled with books. He looked toward the endless stars. But now you know. You nodded gently. The universe is the library. His eyes sparkled warmly. And every life is one of its stories. A soft breeze drifted across the balcony. It carried the scent of rain, pine forests, salt water, warm tea, old paper, wildflowers, and countless other places you had visited. Every memory had become part of the wind. The keeper opened his hand. A tiny point of golden light appeared above his palm. It pulsed softly. "What is it?" you asked. "A story." The little light floated upward. It joined thousands of others already rising through the heavens. Each one glowed differently. Some bright, some gentle, some barely visible. Together, they became a magnificent river of starlight flowing across the universe. Their books? The keeper smiled. They were. What are they now? He looked toward the glowing river. Light. The answer needed nothing more. Far below, the endless library shimmered quietly. Its shelves would always remain. Its doors would always stay open. But the greatest stories never remained upon the shelves forever. Eventually, they became light for someone else. The navigator stepped closer. I remember my first journey. They watched the river of starlight drift across the sky. I thought I had come here to discover the universe. A gentle laugh escaped them. I only discovered how beautiful kindness could be. The keeper nodded. Most travelers say something similar. You stood together for a long while. No one counted the passing moments. No one needed to. A single shooting star crossed the heavens. Then another. Soon, dozens drifted peacefully across the sky. Not falling. Traveling. Carrying tiny lights toward worlds yet unseen. The keeper watched them with quiet affection. Every time someone chooses compassion, the library grows brighter. You looked toward the galaxies. So the library is still growing? He smiled. Every day. Not because new books arrive, but because new kindness appears. The words settled gently into your heart. Somewhere, on a small blue world called Earth, someone was helping a stranger. Someone was reading a bedtime story. Someone was planting a tree whose shade they might never sit beneath. Someone was quietly forgiving. The library was already welcoming those moments, long before history would ever notice them. The keeper turned toward you one final time. I have only one last lesson. You listened carefully. He spoke almost in a whisper. When you leave this place, do not try to remember every room. Remember how each room made you feel. The first ocean. The oldest forest. The child who greeted galaxies. The shelf reserved for Earth. The quiet garden. He smiled. Wonder is never something you carry in your mind. It is something you carry in the way you live. The river of starlight continued flowing overhead. For a brief moment, you noticed one tiny light separating from the others. It drifted gently toward Earth, toward oceans, mountains, cities, quiet homes. It disappeared somewhere beyond the clouds. Perhaps into the heart of someone who had simply looked up at the stars. The keeper placed one hand over his heart. Every traveler asks me the same question. You smiled. What is it? He looked toward the endless universe. They ask whether this library is real. He laughed softly. And what do you tell them? The keeper's eyes reflected every star in the sky. I tell them that whenever someone pauses to admire a sunset, shares a quiet meal with someone they love, helps another without expecting reward, or looks up at the night sky with wonder, they have already entered the library. Silence embraced the balcony once more. Not the silence of an ending, the silence of peace. Slowly, the stars seemed to grow brighter. The white balcony became softer. The keeper, the navigator, the endless library. Everything dissolved gently into warm golden light. Only one sentence remained, floating quietly among the stars. Every story worth telling teaches us how to live a little more gently. And somewhere, far beyond the final page, the library quietly opened its doors for the next traveler.